The first thing I noticed was the empty seat. It was supposed to be filled by my 9-year-old grandson, Noah. Instead, his 2 younger siblings were laughing in a photograph from Disney World, standing between their parents in front of Cinderella Castle. My daughter had posted the picture with the caption, "The perfect family vacation." I stared at it for almost a minute before I noticed the date. They had been gone for 3 days. And Noah was supposed to be at home. Alone. I called my daughter immediately. No answer. I called her husband, Mark. Nothing. I called again. Still nothing. Then, just after midnight, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. "Hello?" A man's voice answered. "Are you Noah's grandmother?" Every muscle in my body tightened. "Yes." "Who is this?" "My name is Daniel. I work near the community center." I stood up. "What happened to Noah?" The man hesitated. "He's here." "Why?" "He's been sitting on a bench outside since around 6 this evening." I couldn't breathe for a second. "What do you mean, sitting on a bench?" "He told me his parents were away. They're in Florida." "I know." My voice dropped. "Where is Noah supposed to be?" The man sighed. "That's the problem. He says he was left home alone. He got scared and came here." I grabbed my coat. "Is he hurt?" "No. But he looks exhausted." I was already walking toward the door. "Stay with him." "I'm coming." The drive took 17 minutes. I barely remember the road. All I could think about was Noah. 9 years old. Adopted by my daughter Emily and her husband when he was 4. A quiet child with enormous brown eyes and a habit of apologizing whenever someone raised their voice. When I reached the community center, I saw him immediately. He was curled up on a wooden bench. His backpack sat beside him. He was wearing the blue sweater I had given him for Christmas. When he saw me, he stood so quickly that his backpack fell over. "Grandma?" I ran to him. He wrapped his arms around me. He was shaking. "I came," I whispered. He nodded against my shoulder. "I knew you would." Those words broke my heart. Because he shouldn't have had to wonder. I looked at Daniel. "Thank you?" He nodded. I asked him where his parents were. He said they took Sophie and Samuel to Disney. I looked down at Noah. "Why didn't you go?" He stared at the ground. "Mom said there wasn't room." "There wasn't room?" He shrugged. "She said the tickets were already expensive." I felt anger rising in my chest, but I forced it down. "How long were you alone?" "Since Monday." I stared at him. "Monday?" He nodded. "They left food." "What kind?" "Cereal. Bread. Peanut butter." "Did anyone check on you?" "No." "Your parents didn't call?" "Mom called once." "What did she say?" Noah's eyes filled with tears. "She said I needed to be responsible." I closed my eyes. He was 9. Not 19. 9. I took him home with me. That night, I made him hot chocolate. He sat at my kitchen table holding the mug with both hands. "Grandma?" "Yes?" "Are you angry?" "At you?" He nodded. "No. Mom said you might be." I leaned forward. "Your mother was wrong." He looked relieved. Then he whispered, "She says I make things difficult." I didn't answer immediately. Because suddenly the Disney trip wasn't the real story. It was only the thing that had finally exposed something much bigger. Emily had adopted Noah when she and Mark believed they couldn't have children. For years, Noah had been their only child. He was loved. At least, I thought he was. Then Sophie and Samuel were born. Twins. Biological children. And slowly, Emily began treating Noah differently. At first, it was little things. She stopped taking him to soccer. Then she stopped bringing him to family events. She told me she was overwhelmed. I believed her. When the twins were babies, I understood why she was exhausted. But eventually, the excuses stopped making sense. One afternoon, I found Noah sitting alone in Emily's backyard while everyone else was inside celebrating the twins' birthday. He told me he didn't mind. I believed him. I shouldn't have. The next morning, I called Emily. She finally answered. Mom, what's wrong? You left Noah alone. He's fine. He was sitting outside a community center at midnight. He wasn't supposed to leave the house. He's 9. He knows how to use the microwave. I gripped the phone. You spent $34,000 on a vacation and couldn't arrange someone to watch your son? There was silence. Then she said quietly, It wasn't just any vacation. What does that mean? It was supposed to be special for the twins. I looked at Noah. He was sitting on the couch, watching television with the volume low. Was Noah invited? No. Why? He wouldn't enjoy it. How do you know? He gets overwhelmed. No. He gets hurt. She hung up. I thought about calling again. Then I decided not to. Instead, I asked Noah if he wanted to stay with me for a few days. He nodded immediately. That frightened me more than if he had hesitated. 3 days later, Mark came to my house. He didn't knock. He opened the door with the spare key. Where is Noah? Upstairs. You need to send him home. No. He stared at me. You can't interfere with our parenting. You left your 9-year-old alone for 6 days. He was supposed to stay home. He was alone. He's not helpless. No. He's a child. Mark's jaw tightened. You don't understand our situation. Then explain it. He said nothing. That was when I noticed something. His hands were shaking. Not with anger. Fear. I asked, What are you hiding? He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. Some things are better left buried. He walked out. That sentence stayed with me. 2 days later, I found an envelope in Noah's backpack. It had my name on it. Inside was a handwritten note. Grandma, if Mom gets mad, please don't let her send me away. My hands trembled. There was another sentence. I know I'm not their real son. I sat on the edge of the bed. That was when I realized how badly we had failed him. Noah didn't just believe he was adopted. He believed adoption meant he was less important. I decided I needed answers. I called my sister Linda. She was quiet when I told her about the note. Then she said, There is something Emily never told you. What? After the twins were born, Emily told me she regretted adopting Noah. I felt sick. She said that? She said she loved him, but she didn't feel the same connection. Why didn't you tell me? She made me promise. I stared at the wall. Then Linda added, And Mark wanted to give Noah up. The next day, I went through old family records. I found the adoption papers. Something didn't look right. There was a name I recognized. David Carter. Mark's older brother. David had died several years earlier. But he had apparently been involved in Noah's adoption. I contacted a lawyer just to understand what the documents meant. That's when I discovered the truth. Noah's biological grandparents had left him a trust. It wasn't enormous. But it was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Mark had access to it as Noah's guardian. Suddenly, the $34,000 vacation looked very different. I requested records of the account. There had been withdrawals. Thousands of dollars. The total was almost exactly what Emily and Mark had spent on the Disney trip. I called Mark. Did you use Noah's money? Silence. Then he whispered, I was going to put it back. When? After the business recovered. You used his inheritance to pay for a vacation? It wasn't like that. How was it? He's going to have plenty of money when he's older. I couldn't believe how casually he said it. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Did Emily know? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. When Emily came to my house that evening, she was crying. I knew about some of the withdrawals, she admitted. Some? I didn't know how much. You knew your husband was taking Noah's money. I thought he'd replace it. And you still went to Disney? She looked down. I wanted 1 week where I didn't feel guilty. I stared at my daughter. 1 week? She nodded. Then she said something that finally explained the cruelty. When the twins were born, everything felt natural. I never had to think about whether I loved them enough. Her voice broke. With Noah, I felt guilty all the time. Why? Because he reminded me that I couldn't give him what his birth parents had taken away. So you pushed him away. She covered her face. Yes. I sat beside her. You didn't stop loving him. You stopped knowing how to love him. She cried harder. But I wasn't ready to forgive her. Not yet. The next morning, Mark took Noah without telling anyone. I panicked. For 6 hours, I didn't know where my grandson was. Then I received a message from an unknown number. Stop digging. I called the police and reported Noah missing from my care. Later that afternoon, Mark's attorney contacted me. Noah was safe. But Mark wanted me to stay away. I refused. And then something unexpected happened. Emily called me. Mom, I found something. What? Dad's old files. Whose? Mark's. She had found copies of correspondence from years earlier. Documents showing that Mark knew about Noah's trust before the adoption was finalized. He hadn't simply discovered the money later. He knew from the beginning. Worse, there were letters showing that Noah's biological uncle had tried to stop the adoption because he believed Mark was financially motivated. Suddenly, I understood why Mark had always been so protective of Noah's past. He wasn't protecting Noah. He was protecting the secret. Emily and I confronted him together. He didn't scream. He didn't deny it. He simply sat at the kitchen table and stared at the floor. Finally, he said, I never meant for things to go this far. I asked, Then where did you think they would go? He looked at Emily. I thought once the restaurant succeeded, I'd replace everything. You spent his money because you were desperate, Emily said. Yes. And you convinced me that Noah was the problem. Mark closed his eyes. I knew you were struggling after the twins were born. So you used that? I thought if you bonded more with the twins, you'd stop worrying about Noah. I stood. You didn't just hurt Noah. You destroyed your marriage. Mark didn't respond. The final decision wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming. There was just Emily sitting beside me, holding her daughter's old photograph, crying as she realized how many years she had lost. Noah came home to me. For a while, he stayed with me. Emily began rebuilding her relationship with him slowly. She didn't demand forgiveness. She didn't tell him she had made mistakes because she was tired. She simply apologized. Again. And again. And again. The twins eventually understood that Noah hadn't been excluded because he was bad. He had been excluded because the adults had failed him. One afternoon, Sophie walked into my kitchen holding 3 pieces of cake. She gave one to Noah, one to Samuel, then one to herself. She looked at me. Grandma, we're all family, right? I smiled. Yes. Noah looked at her. Even though I'm adopted? Sophie frowned. That's dumb. Noah laughed. It was the first time I had heard him laugh like that in months. Years later, I still remember the photograph that started everything. The one of my daughter, Mark, Sophie, and Samuel standing in front of the castle. 4 people smiling. And 1 child missing. That empty space told me more than any photograph could. Because the problem wasn't that they had taken a $34,000 vacation. The problem was that they had decided 1 child didn't belong in the picture. And that child was sitting alone, wondering what he had done wrong. Noah is grown now. He still has the blue sweater. He keeps it folded in a drawer. I once asked him why. He smiled and said, Because you came for me that night. I told him I would have come anywhere. He shook his head. You don't understand, Grandma. What? I had already decided nobody was coming. That sentence stayed with me. Because children shouldn't have to learn that lesson. They should learn that someone will answer. Someone will notice. Someone will come. And when I think about that night now, I don't remember the expensive vacation first. I remember the bench. I remember a 9-year-old boy sitting alone in the cold. I remember his tiny backpack beside him. And I remember the first thing he said when he saw me. "Grandma, you came." "Yes, Noah. I came. And I would make that drive again for the rest of my life.